Infinity Stones, Mephisto takes over Las Vegas, and Batman and Wonder Woman go on an adventure, all this week. What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is Preview Picks, the show on a Monday where I go over the comic books that are coming out this Wednesday, give you an impression as to what they're about, and whether there's something you should be looking for at your comic book shop. So make sure you subscribe to get one of these every Monday. The first book that I want to talk about is Astonishing XMen number 8, written by Charles Soule, and this has brought Charles Xavier back from the dead. Now he's inside the body of Phantom X, I believe, who's still stuck in the ethereal plane, and now he's got to kind of bond this team together as he makes his way in the world. But he could have unleashed one of their most fearful enemies. So that's something you've got to read Astonishing X-Men for in order to get a little bit more information. Next, we'll talk about DC, and we've got Batman and the Signal number 2, which is coming out, and it seems like this book has been delayed. I wasn't necessarily sure what to think of it, and overall it's not necessarily something that I am super interested in, but I'm going to keep my eyes on it anyway because it is only 3 issues, and we are basically more than halfway there once I read this one. So it's something that I'm going to take the opportunity to read, and maybe it'll grow on me. Of course, there is a book that I don't need to grow on me, and that is Descender number 27. So I've been reading Descender since issue number 1, which has been years, and overall the combination of Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen in that watercolor space art is fantastic. I really love the way that everything's set up, and the storyline is great. It's emotionally driven. I mean, a robot will make you cry. It's just that good. So it's a recommendation from me, something you should be picking up every time it comes out. There is a book that is coming out every single week right now, and that's Avengers. So Avengers 681 continues with the No Surrender storyline, which seems to be picking up a little bit of speed as we kind of get into this whole new setting. It's still not something that has drawn me to pick up these books consistently. It's one of those things where I'm checking it out as I have the time. I hope that some people out there are really enjoying it. It feels like some people are, but it's not quite this event for me, so I can't really put my 2 cents in. There is a book from DC that I am really liking, though, and Justice League number 39 continues on with the Christopher Priest-driven storyline, and we are going to finally see the culmination of these things because he only has a few issues left. We're on part 5 or part 6 of the current storyline, and I'm really getting the feel for him, and it makes me feel a little bit sad that Scott Snyder will be taking over for Christopher Priest and other writers that are going to be taking this book until we transition over into those new folks. I am kind of a fan of Scott Snyder's work, but it's just not going to be the same kind of tight, interpersonal-driven things that we are seeing inside Christopher Priest's writing. But let's bounce back over to Marvel and let's talk about Amazing Spider-Man number 796, and this is going to be the continuation, or at least the possible finale, of the Red Threat storyline, which shows Norman Osborn getting the Carnage symbiote and bonding to it, becoming the Red Goblin, the birth of the Red Goblin, which is what happened in last issue. So this is possibly when he's going to introduce himself, reveal himself as the Red Goblin to Peter Parker's Spider-Man, who's going through a whole host of different things. Hopefully it's going to be a little bit faster paced than the last issue where we were dealing with Loki, Sorcerer Supreme. I can only hope. Can't make any guarantees, but fingers crossed on that one. Then there's a book that I just added to my pull list recently again, and that was Super Sons, and Super Sons number 13 comes out, and we get to see Talia al Ghul coming and working with Damian. Working with is probably a loose term because you see on the cover she's got a sword to his throat, and she's taking him away from Jonathan Kent. So there's a lot of stuff that could really go on, especially since we just recently had a visit with Joelle Jones's version of Talia al Ghul, so I'm really interested in the character right now, and it's a great way to introduce her to this storyline and see where things go. I'm excited to see what's going to happen. It looks like it's only going to be a 2-parter, so it's plenty of time for you guys to jump on and, get a little bit of a taste of Super Sons, which has been solid since its beginning. Even though we were talking about beginnings of a story arc, let's talk about the end of a story arc, or at least the end of a run of a creator. And Brian Michael Bendis is leaving Marvel, but he's leaving also behind Defenders, and Defenders number 10 comes out, which is Brian Michael Bendis' work. So I fell off Defenders, seems to be okay. But to be perfectly honest with you, I am far more interested in Daredevil, and Daredevil 599 comes out this week, and that is going to be continuing the Mayor Fisk storyline, which should be culminating in 600. So we've got Muse on the prowl, we've got the Kingpin looking for opportunities to exploit this kind of superhero protocol, and with the paintings that Muse has been doing all over the city, it makes it easier for him to kind of use these as opportunities. There's a lot of tension that's really ratcheting up politically as well as physically. Violence is going to ensue, and I can't wait to see where Charles Soule ends this bad boy up. Daredevil number 600 is probably going to be can't miss, and that means 599 is a close second. However, when we jump back over to DC, we see a book that might miss, and that is Superman number 41, which is talking about Suicide Planet, which is them going to save a group of a race of people that are on a planet that is going to die, that their faith tells them stay. And this feels like an eerily similar storyline to what we saw in Green Lanterns a little bit earlier in the year, and it didn't really grab me then, and it's not really grabbing me now. I have been really happy with Peter J. Tomasi's run. However, this is not Peter J. Tomasi writing this story, so that probably explains things. I'm going to let it run its course and give it its do, but the expectations aren't quite as high as, like a Peter J. Tomasi, Patrick Gleason book. So it's not necessarily something that I'm going to be like, yay, Superman! It's more like, Superman. Now, instead of the end of a planet, let's talk about the end of another run, and that is Punisher, the Platoon, number 6 by Garth Ennis. And this has been great. I really enjoyed this kind of past storytelling that really gave us a little bit of insight into Frank Castle's Punisher and his first tour, his first platoon inside Vietnam. Though it does kind of date the character at this point in time, I'm not really concerned about that because we can deal with a sliding timescale when it comes to Marvel, so that way things work in different parts of the continuity. But overall, I found that the story was powerful, it's exciting, and it shows me a little bit more of what Frank was before he became the Punisher, which is always welcome. It's something that I'm thinking that you guys should pick up in trade, so I would take a look for that, see where it's going to be coming out and pick it up so that way you can give it a read through. As we whittle down on the continuing storylines for this week, we've got Damage number 2, which is continuing DC's New Age of Heroes, and it's the first book from the New Age of Heroes to have a second issue. And after the first issue, I really hope that there's a lot more substance that comes into this book because it was a little bit lacking when it came to the first one. The action, the art, everything was fantastic about that, but the actual meat and potatoes of the book were a little bit lacking. They could have used some chives, some garlic, some pepper, just spice up the dish a little bit. So I'm really hopeful for where issue number 2 and issue number 3 are going to really kind of bring the character so that way I can decide whether it's going to stay on the pull list or get kicked off. Speaking of getting kicked off, let's talk about Mighty Thor number 704. So Mighty Thor's The Death of Mighty Thor has been a continuing arc for the last few issues, starting off in issue number 700. However, the big thing about this is that we're going to start really getting serious because the Mangog has made his way to Asgard. You've got Jane Foster sitting in her bed, dying of cancer, awaiting her treatment so that way she can try and revive herself. Her allies are going to be taking on these people so that way the War of the Realms can be won and Malekith will not succeed. However, based on the cover of 705 and everything that we've been hearing, that is not going to be the case. So 704 is going to be the moment that turns the tide and brings Jane Foster into the fray and ultimately to her demise. So that's something that I'm really excited for and something you guys should be really excited for too. As we finish up with the Mighty Thor, let's talk about Batman, which brings in a brand new character that everybody loves to write about, and that is Poison Ivy. I mean, that's not really a brand new character, but it's a brand new character to the line because what Poison Ivy is going to be doing is kicking off the storyline, Everyone Loves Ivy. So she is going to be doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and for a lot of people, they didn't necessarily appreciate the end of the Super Friends arc, which just finished up, but it's something that I enjoyed at least the art for. The storyline was a little bit thin, so hopefully Tom King can redeem himself a little bit with this one. I'm really anticipating a good one because, well, Tom King's been more hit than miss as far as the Batman line is concerned, and I really want to see him continue a strong legacy before we get to issue number 50, where there's evidently some sort of big wedding planned. But now that we're done with the ongoing series, let's talk about new number 1s. We've got Black Panther Annual number 1, which is coming out, and that collects a lot of the writers from the history of Black Panther to tell these short stories and collaborate them together. With the Black Panther movie coming out, or having already come out at this point in time, then it's really one of those situations where if you're enticed or you're interested in Black Panther at all, this is the book for you to go grab because it's going to give you a little bit of history and you're going to get some participation from some of the best creators in the history of the character. Another new number 1 is Deathbed number 1 by Joshua Williamson. So this is a Vertigo title in the same vein as Frostbite, and this is telling the story about some sort of 90-year-old guy that has had all kinds of ridiculous adventures, and he's sitting down with an author who's going to write his memoirs, and she gets sucked into some sort of psychedelic, trippy thing. It's something that piqued my interest. It caught my attention. It got my eye. And it's something that I'm going to be checking out. So I can't necessarily make a recommendation for it, but it's something I'm going to be flipping through, and it's something you guys should be flipping through because interesting books are always the most fun. Another interesting book, though, would be from Dark Horse, and that's Matahari number 1. So this tells the tale of a woman that has actually occurred in history. So she was a spy, she was an assassin, she was all kinds of different things, and Matahari is a figure known to history, and if you want a little bit more insight into the character, into the person, into the actual being that lived on this planet, this is going to be a good bit of insight into that. Kind of mixing a little bit of the fable with the facts. So I'm excited to check it out. I don't know if it's something that's going to stick around on my pull list, but it's at least something that I'm going to give a shot. Then we get to jump into some big event books. So we have Infinity Countdown Prime from Marvel. So this is going to show the gathering of the Infinity Stones. We get to see some of the final locations. You've got the Mind Stone still needs to be revealed. The Time Stone needs to be revealed. They need to get the Soul Stone from Magus. There's so much that's got to go on before we actually get into the Infinity Countdown aspect of things. So it's one of those things that are going to continue to push things along strong, like Infinity Countdown Adam Warlock did a few weeks ago. So that's going to be something pretty serious. The next one that I want to talk about that's part of an event book is Milk Wars Part 4, which is Cave Carson Swamp Thing #1. So Cave Carson is actually probably one of the more grounded pieces of the Young Animal imprint, and then you've got Swamp Thing, which deals in the magical and the mystical, so I'm really excited to see what the combination of these really does for me as a character, and with the insanity that's just been ratcheting up every single book, I'm interested to see where this one goes as they kind of invade and make their assault on the retcon headquarters, because that's probably what we're going to get revealed inside this issue. Of course, after this there is one more, but it's something you should be really reading if you're into a little bit more wild and crazy storytelling. Last from the event books, let's talk about Doctor Strange Damnation #1, which is continuing the events of Doctor Strange #385, which happened this past week. So, Doctor Strange Damnation gets us with Mephisto, and it ties in things like Iron Fist and Blade and a few other different characters inside the Marvel Universe as Doctor Strange goes to Las Vegas to resurrect Las Vegas from what the events of Secret Empire were, or, tries to prevent those kind of things, or something's happening, and Doctor Strange and Mephisto are going to make a deal or a bet or a gamble, and it's going to be interesting. So it's one of those things where it's a combination of Donny Cates and Nick Spencer, and overall I like Nick Spencer, and I'm really enjoying Donny Cates' runs on the books that he's doing for Marvel, so I can't help but recommend it for you guys. Then to finish off brand new #1s, let's talk about Image. We've got Hit Girl #1. So this is Mark Millar and Ricardo Lopez Ortiz, who is a relatively unknown illustrator, but it's going to be this kind of sketchy, scratchy, edgy, really gritty storytelling style, so I'm interested to see what kind of combination these two put together, especially with the success of Kick-Ass last week. It's not necessarily, I'm a little bit more hesitant regarding this art style, but I can't wait to see where the story goes. However, the big book for the week is The Brave and the Bold, Batman Wonder Woman #1, which is written and illustrated by Liam Sharp. So this is really where he's going to be putting forth his chops in both capacities, trying to tell the story between Batman and Wonder Woman, and how that bond and how they kind of work through these things. Given what we saw in Batman #39 and #40, with Tom King's interpretation of the relationship, this is possibly going to be something completely different. So I can't wait to see what he puts on paper for us. Those are my thoughts, though. So I'm excited for a lot of these books, but I want to know what you guys are excited for too, so hit me up in the comments down below and we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.